Good morning. Welcome back to the show. 11:50 is the time. Let's talk royals. I know I always hate myself a little bit when I do these items, but this is a major court case. It's going to take many weeks, although everyone was pretty surprised when Prince Harry in the High Court yesterday at the Royal Courts of Justice was only in the witness box for just a measly 2 hours. He was expected to do an entire day. Well, he was complaining that the media had made not just, well, previously his own mother's life a misery, but of course his current wife, I say current, his wife, I'm not implying anything, Meghan's life a misery, and insisted that it must have been some sort of nefarious action by the Daily Mail and the Mail on Sunday that got them a number of big exclusive stories about his life, because he absolutely insists that it wasn't people in his close circle of friends who were divulging those secrets. Well, let's talk about this with Dickie Arbiter. He's former press secretary to the late Queen and also a former royal journalist. Dickie, thank you so much for joining us.
Pleasure, Julia.
It's fascinating. I mean, this is the third major court case Prince Harry is taking part in. He was in the witness box, got quite emotional talking about all of this. And this is really clear. This isn't just about, money for him, getting a settlement. And there are 7 people in total, including the likes of Elton John and others who are also bringing this case against the Daily Mail and the Mail on Sunday. But this is really personal for him.
It's very personal for him, and he's obviously got an axe to grind. In his witness statement, he was saying that he wants truth, justice, and accountability. Now, I can understand justice and accountability, but after Oprah in 21, 6 hours of Netflix at the end of 21, and his biography Spare, whose truth? His truth or the truth? There's a lot to be answered for. He really has got the bit between his teeth, and I'm not sure what's driving him, because he's being driven by something, because this has cost almost £40 million so far.
What?
And the only people that are winning are the lawyers.
I mean, those lawyers, and Sherborne, he appears at every single one of these court cases. That man, we were discussing, he must have castles and he must own Caribbean islands by now with all his fees. 40 million quid, and that is what's being spent on the lawyers.
Well, that's what is being suggested as being not necessarily the lawyers, but the case so far.
Wow. And
that is a lot of money. In anybody's book. And as I said a moment ago, the only real winners in this are the barristers.
Yeah.
Whether Harry comes out with anything remains to be seen.
That said, of course, look, he did win his case against the Mirror Group and he got a payout there. He also did a settlement with the news group, newspapers who own The Sun, and there was an apology. There was a admission that private investigators may have used nefarious means to gain stories, but certainly not Sun-employed journalists. But there was a payout there. Now, these numbers don't come to light. We don't hear the numbers, but reliably informed, they are in the substantial millions in total, is what has been reported. Lots of expectation that there was going to be a settlement here. In this case, but it does seem like the Mail is going to fight this all the way. There's been some aspects of this case which sort of, have changed in terms of a private investigator who had written a sworn statement and then says, he doesn't, that he was forced to do that and he doesn't stand by it. That sort of, put things up in the air a bit, hasn't it? But how do you think this case is going to go?
Well, it's going to go on and on because the Mail Group, Associated Newspapers, they're really digging their heels in, and they're not going to let go. They're not going to come to a settlement unless it's in their favour. And Harry is not going to settle unless it is in his favour. And he goes on about his wife being mercilessly reported on. A lot of it is self-inflicted. I mean, if you go back years when Harry would, before he went into the army, he'd go clubbing on a regular basis and fall out of these clubs somewhat inebriated. And of course, he's going to get reported on. He's got to learn to behave himself. He's got to learn to do something concrete rather than fighting these newspapers.
Well, he was getting very good coverage over when he was a veteran. When he was fighting, we didn't know for those first 6 months that he was actually over fighting in Afghanistan. But here's the thing. From what I can understand, I was a news reporter, I did doorsteps, I did all that stuff. We are talking often about reporters, and often for magazines, freelance reporters, freelance photographers and the like. Most of these things tend to come from freelancers. That actually, they're not just there and taking a photo of him when he's a bit drunk. They are sort of in his face. They are goading him, and this happens with celebrities and other roles, and actually pushing people. Diana used to talk about the stuff that went into Andrew Morton's book about how, they would literally try and goad her and hustle her until she cried, and then they get the picture they wanted. I've always felt, I wouldn't wish being a royal on my worst enemy. I think it's a terrible life. He didn't choose that life. And I'm thinking, you know what, you're a teenager or you're a lad, you fought in the army, you've got a right to come out of a nightclub a bit drunk every now and then. It's none of my business.
Well, it was actually before he went into the army that he was falling out of a nightclub, getting drunk. But he did very well in the army, and it's something that he should never have left, because he was fitted in the army, and it worked for him. It's all gone downhill since. And yes, he did fight the News of the World, and the Sun and the Daily Mirror, and he got a settlement there. Obviously, they were getting their stories by all sorts of means that they don't do today. But the Mirror, the Associated Newspapers are quite clear. They've been absolutely straight in the way they get stories. And Harry says his friends don't talk. Well, I know from my own experience, in the days when things were going wrong between Charles and Diana, Charles's friends used to talk to the media, and we had a hell of a job to try and keep them to shut them up.
Yeah. And that's the thing. I mean, we've heard from so many, whether it's celebrities or whether it's royals involved in these cases, that actually the paranoia that they have, because they feel like, but I only told one person this. How on earth, does this come out? But the reality is, and again, as we saw, I remember again the Andrew Morton book, and everyone was going, well, he must have made all this up. And then there are all these tapes of Diana talking to him. A lot of these stories were coming often from the people themselves, from their PRs, with their agreement, or from their close circle of friends, and just a nod and a wink. And let's face it, sometimes for money. There were quite often quite big sums available to people who were talking.
Exactly. But, the other thing that Harry was saying is that he was made to perform for the media. Nobody told him to. If you look at William, he doesn't perform for the media. He does things because he wants to do things. Late Queen didn't perform for the media. Charles doesn't perform for the media. If you're of a certain character and you enjoy a good laugh, yes, you're going to do certain things and they're going to pick them up. But it's not all the media. A lot does fall on Harry. And he's got a lot to answer for in the way some of the stories have been presented. Take Las Vegas, strip billiards. It happened. It came out from people who were at the party.
Yeah, they had photos. Again, I've got no problem with him doing that. It's just, you have to understand your position. But here's the thing. We'd all have a lot more sympathy for him, wouldn't we? If he'd gone away, he'd married the woman he loves, and they'd gone away, and they said, we don't want our titles. We're just going to live a private life. Please leave us alone. We would have been really happy for them. But instead, he's basically sold his story to the highest bidder with some of the most incredibly intimate details of their engagement, their children, and, and his family, and conversations with his family. I mean, he talks about having his own privacy being abused, but he's abused his own and his family's privacy. Dickie Arbiter, really good to get your perspective there as a former press secretary to the late Queen. Thank you for joining us. Jake Wallace-Simons. I mean, again, Harry was a hero once, but I don't know. I don't know the rights or wrongs of this case. A judge is going to decide on this case, but but Harry playing the victim doesn't really ring true anymore after he'd made all this money from Netflix and Spare and everything else.
Yeah, I mean, it just feels so tragic to me, this whole thing, because he was a bright young man and brilliant in the RAF and seemed to have a really good future ahead of him as
except he wouldn't be allowed to fight.
Member of the royal family. Sorry, he
wasn't allowed to fight after 6 months when international media found out he was in Afghanistan. He had to come home.
Well, that's true, and of course he's had trouble with the media. Let's not downplay that in his earlier life, and as his mother did, of course, it goes without saying. And yet there's something missing from all this, and it's the kind of stiff upper lip, duty comes first, I'm serving my country, royal family attitude. Never complain, never explain. It's so exemplified by William.
Yeah, but maybe he doesn't
father.
Have that personality.
And he just seems to have missed out on that. It all seems to be about poor me. It's something narcissistic about it, something wallowing about it.
And then he married a woman with exactly the same tendencies.
Yes, and the fact that he's willing to sell his own privacy to the media via Oprah, via his autobiography or whatever, on his own terms and make money off it, means that he can't complain.
Absolutely, that's the issue, isn't it? Love to hear your thoughts on that. 0344 499 1000.